So let me start off by saying I've had a chance to listen to the new album, and it's fantastic.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm simply blown away by it, and I really like your new vocalist.
Thank you so much.
Can you tell me a little?
I can't imagine what it's like when you have to do an interview with an artist or a band, and it's like, I really don't like this album.
Well, that does happen from time to time if you don't like
something. I suppose it does. Yeah, I'm sure it does.
I try to be honest and constructively critical, but I also realize people spend hours and years on this material,
Well,
so
2 years in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you tell me a little bit about how Dave came to join the band?
Yeah, sure. We've been a band since 1985 with our original vocalist, Scott Wenzel, and Scotty was definitely no two ways, ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's an iconic voice, and the combination of my guitar and his vocal put us on the map. I had done previous projects prior to that, and nothing really worked until I got with Scotty, and then bang, there we were, and it was word of mouth. And we got 35 years, give or take, out of that relationship, and we always had clashing personalities, and I would say from about 2005 until about 2019, we just slowly ran out the string, and we just did everything we could until there was nothing left to give, and the band was pretty much done as far as, like, there's no new creativity. The set list is getting shorter. There's less and less that we can do together, and it's like, well, that's it for the band. And then the turning point was we had the opportunity to go to India, and that was like, that's literally halfway around the world. So we went, and Scotty voted no. He said, no, it's too far, we're not going to do it. And the rest of us were unanimously, yes, we need to do this. And so at that point, we got a guest vocalist to come with us. And this is something that I knew was coming for about 3 or 4 years, and I was just reluctant to make the change, because how many bands actually survive the changing of something really important like a lead singer?
Sure, absolutely. I totally agree.
And in our case, myself being the primary songwriter, Scotty tried to get to do it for a few years with like 2 or 3 different guitar players, and he was relying on like producers and various people to write the songs, and it was a hodgepodge. And we were better off together, but I knew we couldn't go on anymore. So I offered to the guys. I said, hey, y'all can stay with Scotty, and you can call it Whitecross, and you can get a new guitar player, and I will be willing to step aside, and I'll just do something different. But I'm not going on with this anymore for the sake of my own sanity. So I offered to do that, and then again, the rest of us were like pretty united. It's like, everybody could kind of see the writing on the wall. So Dave was a vocalist down in Dallas, and we had heard him singing with like a Whitesnake tribute band, and we started getting to know him, and I really took my time because, Whitecross being a Christian rock band, we have things in our messages that we want to portray, and we wanted to make sure that everybody's compatible with the, if you will, the mission of the band, so to say.
Sure.
So we brought Dave in, and we had him as guest vocalist on a couple of gigs, and it's just unbelievable. He's so excited to be in this band, and we're so excited to have him. And there's just a great love and camaraderie. And frankly, it's a lot easier for me to write for Dave's voice because we come from the same background of, we have the same influences growing up of the classic rock from the 70s, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Scorpions, Whitesnake, all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Guitar rock and the whole LA rock scene from the 80s, with like Van Halen and Rat and Dokken and all these other bands. So we have the same ideas as far as what we want to do with the song. Like if I have a basic riff that says, yeah, this riff sounds pretty good, I think we could make something out of this. Then we just get together and we just start and working on some lyric ideas, and it becomes like an assembly line. It's not that hard. Verses, bridges, chorus, guitar solos.
Yeah. So what?
Guitar solos. I'm sorry about that, but as long as Uncle Rex is around, you're going to get guitar solos, kids. That's just the way it is. That's the only way I know how to do it.
Well, keep them coming because I've always been impressed with your guitar playing. You've often been kind of referred to as the Christian Eddie Van Halen in some circles.
Yes, I know, but let's take the opportunity to get real about that. Come on, Eddie Van Halen is like he's up at stratosphere level, and I'm like maybe 2 or 3 feet off the ground here on planet Earth. So let's be realistic about that.
Well,
he's an influence, and he's the reason that I do, you may have noticed I play these guitar solos on every album we do, and that's my little personal homage to Eddie Van Halen. It's like, well, when I first time I heard Eruption, I thought, oh, geez Louise, this is like the new gold standard. So if it's good enough for Eddie, it has to be good enough for the rest of us, right? So
sure.
That's my little way of paying tribute.
Well, and the style of music that you do with Whitecross and the style of bands like you mentioned, Doc and Rat, Van Halen. The solo is an integral part of that. It always has been.
Yeah,
so, modern music today.
It's just the way I like to express myself with the instrument,
Sure. And modern music today doesn't. That element is kind of left out. And I have to say that maybe some of it was people felt like it was overkill with people trying to out solo each other during the '80s till it got to the point where they just said, let's just leave the solos out. But you have to look at the whole scene. The whole scene, sure.
Like by 1992, 93, had gotten really stale. It's like so.
Sure.
Here's Van Halen, and then here's Motley Crue, and their lead singer is like a couple generations down, wannabe attempt at cloning like David Lee Roth, And so all the videos look the same, and we only want bands with guys who look like girls. With the makeup and the hair and everything else, and so it's great. It's like, but it was pretty rigid format. So the whole scene was kind of ripe for, just to go away, and it did. And the grunge movement came in, and the alternative music. And the first thing that they ditched was, okay, we're going to ditch this whole Guitar Hero stuff. Mm-hmm. That's out, and the hair is out, and the $3,000 outfits that you're all wearing, those are out.
Sure.
And the MTV music videos, those are out. Everything's out. Now we're going to have a half dozen years of kids staring at their shoes, wearing old jeans and flannel shirts, complaining about their middle class lifestyle that they had, and life sucks. I never asked to be born. And,
that is
having
very good
that
depiction.
Storm, having weathered that storm, all I can say is Kurt Cobain is dead, and I'm still here.
Yeah.
So
exactly. Most of those guys are gone.
That, and so the guitar solos went away for a long time. So then you had Then you had people like starting all over, relearning how to play guitar. And then now there's just an explosion of, there's amazing, every 10-year-old shredder comes out that can play Rings Around Me. And I just look at it and scratch my head. It's like, oh, wow. It took me 40 years to get to where I'm at, but here's, some 15-year-old that's, like on hyperdrive that can do everything. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking technology has a lot to do with that. Because I remember having just a tab book trying to learn, these parts.
Yeah.
Myself as a teenager with the guitar. Yeah. And nowadays, you can watch YouTube videos, you can watch step by step, you can slow it down.
And that's the whole key. Everything is on like a 2-minute video clip, and you can just watch it and you can learn it, and that's what people are doing. I mean, my son knew nothing about cars until he got one, and then like within a week he had a problem with his alternator, and I said, "You going to take it to the shop?" He said, "No, I just looked up a YouTube video. It looks pretty easy. It's not that hard." And sure enough, he just went to the auto parts store, bought an alternator. A couple hours later, he had it done.
Yeah.
So
yeah, this is exactly how the world works.
And that's how people learn music. There's there's a YouTube video for that shows you how. So, So the tools are out there. So kids are learning at a very early age. So the interesting question is, what is the future of music? Where are the young people who are growing up with it now? Where are they going to take it? Nobody knows, and that's what we're all waiting to find out. But meanwhile, if you like Whitecross, we're still here.
Well, I was extremely excited to see you guys were releasing a new album. And like I said, it's fantastic. I've had a chance to listen to it. Really like everything I heard on it. I was just blown away because,
so much.
Well, like many people, I grew up as a teenager listening to your music, and I was used to Scott, and so here I am like, okay, you're going to change the band. Well, let me see what this sounds like, and I obviously was going to keep an open mind about it regardless, but it's a hard thing to do sometimes, to replace something that's been essential to the sound.
And thank you for being willing to give it a chance, and that's all I can say for anybody. Just give it a, just watch the album on YouTube or listen to it on Spotify. Try it before you buy it.
Well, and
if you like
we
it, we would love it if you'd purchase an actual copy of the music, but you can just listen for yourself and judge for yourself if you think we have a capable new singer. And it's kind of like using Van Halen as the analogy. It's like, well, do you like Sammy or Dave? It's
sure.
Like, Dave sings in a different style than Scotty. And back in the early days, people said, "Oh, you guys sound like rap," and we've lost that comparison entirely. And now we're just on to the music that we love to play.
Yeah, and I do think you mentioned Whitesnake earlier, that he's singing a Whitesnake cover band. I do get that little bluesy kind of Coverdale style vocal, and I like it. I like it a lot, and I want to thank you also for clearing up the when I asked you about Dave originally about the situation with Scott, because we promoted this album pretty heavily, and one of the things that we get a lot of feedback from everyone is, well, what happened with Scott? What went down? Where'd Scott go?
I can elaborate on that a little bit. Scotty is at this point, he's basically, as far as I know, he's basically retired and not doing much. And I have had a few people that have come my way. Now, I have a recording studio, and occasionally, once in a blue moon, I have a studio client. The main reason I have the studio is for my own work, but once in a while, I will produce music for other artists. And so I have people say, I have this project and I need a lead singer for it. And I said, well, you should try Scotty. And they're like, really? You'd be okay with that? And I'm like, yeah, go for it. I wish him all the best in everything, whatever he wants to do. It's great. To use another analogy, we're kind of like Paul and Barnabas. It's just like, well, we both love the Lord. We both have our vision for ministry, and it's just better for both of us.
Two separate paths.
We have a hard time working together. It's just easier and less conflict to, yeah, you do it your way, I'll do it my way, and that's where we are. And
well, and the feedback that we've gotten has been great regarding the vocal change. I think they were just curious, It's sort of like I was too.
I mean, I knew there'd be some pushback. There's always going to be some pushback. We can all remember back in the day when Petra went from a very successful combination with Greg Volz, and they needed to go in a different direction, so they brought in John Schlitt, who sings in a completely different style. And the question is, oh man, is this going to work? Yeah, there was a lot of raised eyebrows. It's like, well, we don't know if this is going to work. And the same thing happened to them. It's like, well, we don't like it. And then, well, I guess it's okay. And then after like a year, it's like, oh yeah, we really like the new guy.
Well, we started promoting your video out there, and the feedback was great. A lot of them said, wow, sounds different, but I really like, what they've done here.
Really good.
Yeah, and a lot of people said, I miss Scott, but I don't hate this either, and I'm going to keep buying Whitecross CDs, and so yeah, the feedback has been really good. So I don't think I realize what you're saying with the pushback, but I don't think there's a lot. I mean, I think most people who have heard it feel like it's very tight. It's a very good album. The musicianship is great, and that there's some chemistry there. This sound, is really, really good. So yeah, we've really,
the other thing
positive, very positive.
The other thing that's maybe it's a little bit unique to our band, since you're a fan and you followed the group from the early days.
Sure.
You may recall when we started out, we were basically kind of a garage band that really didn't know what it was doing in the studio, and we didn't get a whole lot of help from the record label either, but the record companies would insist that, oh, you guys got to have studio musicians.
Yeah.
And I was ghosting the bass guitar parts for the first couple albums, and and all of the drum parts were created from like a drum sequencer.
Wow.
So I was creating demos. Playing the bass guitar, putting on the drum sequence, and then just kind of feeding that to the band, and that was all the way up through In the Kingdom. And the drummer that we had at that time, Mark Mead, he was a really cool guy, but he told me, he said, yeah, dude, I really like these computer drum parts you're coming up with. They really fit the songs. And he ended up playing about 95% of what I had programmed. And the additional 5% was like, him being a great drummer. He just brought it up that additional level of 5%. So we had to go from that to, ultimately that was it was a positive. It helped us get a better sound in the early days, but in the long run, it became an albatross around our neck. That we have to become a band somehow.
Sure.
And from the time when Mike came in the band to play drums, he's been with us for 30 years now, and then from 1994, I had to leave the band for a while because we would just burnt out on each other, and then there was a health issue at my house, so I needed to be home for a while, and then that was resolved successfully, and then in the year 2000 I came back, and we didn't have a regular bass player at that point, so Benny was available, and he just came in and did it, and then Benny's been with us since 2000, so this is we refer to this as the classic lineup, and this is the group that, now we have a band that plays together and we all play together in the studio. Wow, what a concept, For every other band, it's like, Oh yeah, well that's what they do anyways. But for us, it was kind of a new thing. So I'm just so happy that we have this record and everybody plays on it and everybody's pulling in the same direction and everybody's trying to get the same things out of it and the songs are great and we're still committed to our message of, we want to lift up the name of the Lord and make his name known throughout the world.
Well, I give you guys all the credit in the world, especially when you're gone for a little while, like you guys were. I know you kind of dropped out for a while. Scott had sort of his version there, I guess, and then you came back and you guys tried to make things work together, and obviously that didn't work. But to have that time period, I think, in between, and still come back together, be this cohesive unit, and release an album.
And now, in my personal opinion, it's better than it ever was.
Yeah, I mean, like I said,
that's just my personal opinion, and that's not to take anything away from, there were some great records. From In the Kingdom was our most well-known album, and then our first 3 albums where we just really laid down the rock. But, notwithstanding all of that, I think we've made a record that's right up there, and technologically speaking, it's way out in front of everything.
Yeah, and of course I can't speak to that being behind the scenes or anything about how you developed the album, how you guys worked together, which sounds like it was great and came together with a lot of chemistry. But listening to it as a fan, blown away. Sound quality's great, production's great, and there's just something there. There's a gelling effect, where you guys sound like you're firing on all cylinders, and that's
and there's a vibe, and there's that chemistry which is undeniable, and either record has it or it doesn't, and so one of the things that you can do today that you wouldn't have been able to do 30 years ago, like before the internet came along, and before digital technology and cell phones. And, everybody has a website and a webcam and, we can do like a FaceTime call or a Zoom call. Before all that technology existed, bands had to record together at the same time performing in the studio together. Yep. And then you would do overdubs and you add the vocal parts and then you'd be done. And so that kind of, that mentality of forcing people to play together in the same room at the same time is a concept that has, what's happened now is you call your drummer who lives in Arizona, say, hey man, can you lay down a drum part to this click? And then, you got a guitar player who lives in Virginia Beach and, I'll add guitars from my home studio. And then a vocalist who lives in Detroit, it's like, and I'll add the vocal part. And then you send it to a mix engineer who lives in Australia. So people will do it because you can. Sure. And, sometimes it works, but it doesn't always work. And I think maybe it's just nostalgia on my end, but I like to think that there's like this little 2% factor of there's a vibe of when you get together and you play music together.
I agree.
That does something to the chemistry and it does something to the vibe on the whole record, and you just lay the foundation correctly with everybody being in the same room and performing together. Then it feels it adds something that is hard to quantify.
Well, it's the human quality, I think, because when you listen to a lot of these, because when you listen to digitally tracked stuff, people have the chance to perfect it. You can play it as many times as you want, get the timing just right, piece it all together like a puzzle. But I've heard some of that stuff that sounds very robotic and very sterile, and it doesn't sound fun. It doesn't sound like a rock album. It's missing that piece. Yeah, and I think you guys have it. So. With this album, so it was really, like I said, really impressed. What is your?
That's not to say that we don't do a lot of overdubs and all that, and we went down to, I did some of the lead vocals with Dave at my studio, but the bulk of it, we went down to Nashville with John Lowry from who plays keyboards for Petra, but he also has a studio, and he's a great vocal producer. So, so we put that part on John, and, and he guided the vocal sessions, and, so we have our overdubs on there, but again, it just comes back to that we have that foundation of the band performing together. That really makes the difference for us.
So putting aside the Eddie Van Halen comparison that we talked about earlier.
Right. So I just put the record straight on that. I don't feel comfortable for that, because I just, in my mind, I see somebody posting on Facebook later on, geez, I heard this interview with Rex, and they compared him to Eddie Van Halen, and he seemed okay with that. It's like, what kind of ego is that? It's like, no. I'm honored to be mentioned in the same sentence, but we all understand, Eddie is like way up in the sky, and I'm way down here close to the ground. So,
well, let's just say within the realm of Christian rock and metal, you're highly regarded in that respect, and
I'll go with that.
Yeah, and there are some similarities there, and so, I think for a lot of people, when bands like Whitecross and Stryper and, I can go on and on, but when a lot of these bands came about, a lot of people wanted a Christian alternative to bands that were out there that maybe they didn't like their message, right? So when you guys came along, it was very impressive to hear somebody who could shred, and play in that same style. But
I'll tell you, when I was 15, I took great pride, for some unknown reason, that I knew how to play every song by Black Sabbath. Like, that's an accomplishment for a 15-year-old, I guess. That's what was on my mind. But it always bothered me that, man, how come there's no band that connects the dots and understands that, God is the author of all creativity, and we're made in His image, and if you want to be right with the world, then you need to be right with God, and you do that with Jesus Christ. So, why is there nobody willing to bring this aspect to their music? And I loved all the great bands from the 70s, everybody from ZZ Top to Bad Company, Led Zeppelin, and all this stuff. And they're all coming, in my opinion, they're all coming from the wrong place, So we need a God-centered band. So when I started working on the concept, there was Stryper and Res Band I was aware of, and I was not aware of any other band that was doing the same thing. So in my mind, it's like, well, I don't have anything to compare this to. I'm literally making it up as I go along. And then I ran into Scotty, and then we would go to the Cornerstone Festival together, and they would say, I remember one year at Cornerstone, this had to be about 1986, or maybe 86, we had started our band, Whitecross. We started in 1985. Our album didn't come out until 87, but in the meantime, there was a Cornerstone Festival, and the guy gets on the stage and goes, and now let's hear it for the greatest rock band, in Christian music today. And I don't even remember who the group was, but they came out and it was terrible. And I'm like, this sucks. It's like, this is not rock. Van Halen is rock. Motley Crue is rock. I don't know what this is, but this sounds like Southern Baptist weird songs when they added a drummer. And they threw in a double kick drum just for the visual thing, but the guy never played it. This is terrible.
Yeah, and I think you're
like,
dead on accurate.
I turned to my left, and Scotty's standing there, and he's enjoying it. And I'm like, dude, we need to bail right now. We need to go rehearse right now, because the window is wide open. There's Stryper, and there's nobody else. And I could totally feel the vibe from the crowd. It's like, man, they're just itching for a rock band to come in and show us some shred.
And they were.
We came out, and our band was kind of like a garage. We were a mishmash. We were a garage band. We had a bass player and a drummer who weren't that great, and that's putting it kindly. And then, we had Scotty, who had that authentic Stephen Piercy rap vocal sound in his voice. And then, my guitar, which was at least something. I know that I've improved a lot since those days. But, in my mind, I was thinking, man, we got to do everything we can to present like a rock experience, like what people are used to in the mainstream.
And they were hungry for this.
It worked big time. And and there was I have this little theory. You have slots in your mind for about a dozen bands that are your favorite bands, and then after that, groups can rotate in and out, but you always have those top slots in your mind for your favorite acts, and it's like, man, there's Stryper and there's empty slots waiting to be filled, and the first band that comes out that can shred is going to fill that slot, and it needs to be us.
I totally place you guys.
Mission.
Yeah, I totally place you guys the same way. When you look at the top bands, especially of the '80s Christian metal scene, you guys are right there with Stryper. Stryper had a similar story to what you were telling me. Michael Sweet, Robert. They listened to Black Sabbath. They loved Ozzy, different things.
Yeah,
they wanted. A different
I think their career path has been much different. And they were.
Oh, sure.
They were managed a lot more shrewdly and aggressively, and whereas we went straight into the Christian music industry. We didn't have any help. We didn't have any clue as to what we were doing, and we didn't have any backing or anything like that. So,
you guys were DIY from the beginning. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys went straight in, but
along the way, I would say we have made virtually every mistake in the book possible.
Well, you learn from mistakes, though, right? So,
one thing I can say about Whitecross from the very beginning is I ran into some of the other Christian rock bands, and I know which ones that I'm thinking of, but I'm not going to say out loud.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to gossip about it. But
sure.
Talking with a couple of the guys from a couple of the other bands. I'm so mad. Why are you mad, bro? Oh, the pastor at this church, he's trying to shut us down. What do you mean? It's like, well, I got people telling me they don't like the way I move, they don't like the way I wear my hair, they don't like this, but man, where is my freedom in Christ to do whatever I want? And I'm like, just making mental notes. Okay, so your freedom to do whatever you want, that's the important thing. and I'm thinking that, we had a couple of discussions amongst ourselves that, well, we're not here to cause a weaker brother to stumble in the faith, so we will voluntarily, if it helps people to feel more comfortable around our music, if we don't have to wear the crazy makeup, and we don't have to have the, we don't have to get the rings piercing in our eyelids and our nose and everything else.
Sure.
And we don't have to do all that stuff if it will cause harmony in the church. We're happy to go along and get along, and we looked at ourselves. Well, we're here to serve the church and to serve the people and to serve the needs of the event, and we want to see people making decisions for Christ. So by taking that attitude, I think that we were welcomed into a lot of festivals as the token rock band. Mm-hmm. They called us the metal band at the time, and I guess by the standards of that era, we were the metal band. Nowadays, you would look at what we're doing and you say, well, yeah, that's dad rock. It's not.
Reclassify
modern, sorry to interrupt, but I think we just had that little more easygoing attitude about, we're not here to push for our rights as believers. We have those rights, but we're not going to force it on everybody else. And I think that kind of helped us in the beginning.
Yeah, and I have a question for you because I know some people, especially when Christian hard rock and metal really started coming a little more the forefront. For a lot of people, they were conflicted about whether or not this was music of the world, emulating. Was
Right.
did you ever feel conflicted in doing this type of music, knowing that, it had a background coming from things like Black
No, not from day one. No. I just, it's all according to what the Holy Spirit is giving you, inside of yourself and the mission that God has given you. And I can tell you that, so these days, for the last many years, if I'm not, I've had a couple people get all butthurt about, something they just decide that they want to get butthurt about. And so they write these angry posts, Rex isn't this, Rex isn't that. Rex is basically not conforming to my idea of what I think a Christian is supposed to be. And a couple times I've responded, hey, man, if you want to come and see me personally and talk it over, you can find me at Cornerstone Church every Sunday if I'm not out on the road on a gig with the band. So in the praise band, a couple times I've gotten a little crazy with the soloing. And one day we finished the service, and a blue-haired old lady was walking towards me with a scowly look on her face, and I'm like, oh boy, here it comes. I'm going to get it. And she goes, young man. And it's like, well, she's wrong right there because I'm not young. She goes, young man, whatever it is that you're doing, you better just keep doing it because I could totally feel the joy of the Holy Spirit in your playing. And I was like, oh, okay, that's the last thing I expected to hear. But that's what I felt at the time.
Yeah,
so
sure.
So there's a real fine line between when you're just expressing the gifts that God has given you. That's one thing. And there's a razor's edge where if you cross over the line where it becomes, yeah, look at me, I'm so great, I'm so arrogant, I'm the big people, you're the little people, et cetera, look at me, look at me, look at me, it's all about me. And when you cross over, and there's a fine line to where you are like maximum expressing the gift of the Holy Spirit that's in you versus crossing over that line and, oh yeah, I'm a rock star, look at me, look at me.
Sure, removing yourself.
And you have to know where that is. And I think it's okay for me to say at this point that there's a maturity level, and you have to know the difference as a musician. And you have to know where that line is. Whether you're a lead singer, look how many high notes I can sing. It's either going to be that, or it's like I'm just expressing the joy of the Lord in my singing. If you're a drummer, I didn't buy all these tom-toms and then I'm not playing them. I'm going to play my tom fills on every song. There's that attitude, or I'm going to play the song, serve the people, serve the Lord with my gifts. So it's all in the perspective where you're coming from as a musician, sure. And that's the important thing.
Absolutely.
And and we try to maintain that, and we have fun doing it, and then we're still able to, as you can hear from the new album, I think it's our best album, and we're all playing at a very high level. So.
Yeah, and I don't want to make this comparison, but you guys almost sound like a new band. Of course the vocals are different, but I mean, definitely your playing stands out to me. I kind of recognize, your riff style a lot of times. I sort of recognize the runs as being your style, so I'm not saying that at all. But it's almost like a new beginning or a rebirth of the band with this album, I think.
I felt like especially after 2010, we just kind of ran the bus into the station, and it was just slowing down, and we're passing the last city block, and there's the station up ahead, and we're just kind of easing into the station here, and it's done. And I knew I was very reluctant to do anything about making a change in the band because out of respect for our fans, it's like, they're not going to like it if we go changing the lead singer, and it was becoming a crisis point for me. And then, like I said, we had that opportunity to go to India, and that was the final issue that was the thing that forced the issue. It's like, okay, who's in, who's out? And we all wanted to go. Scotty didn't want to go. Scotty stayed home. We went, he has, if you ask him, he'll tell you, no, those guys didn't give me enough information, blah, blah, blah. He'll have a long list of reasons. But it basically came down to we wanted to do it. He didn't, at the end of the day, he didn't want to do it. And I encourage people always, when I'm talking about Scotty or anybody else, which is not too often, I always try to be fair, and I encourage people, hey, go talk to Scotty and get his version of it. Sure. And then, figure it out, because the truth, I'm sure, is there's my side, your side, and then the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Sure.
So, that kind of forced the issue, and then after that point, it became a new band, and there was no new records or anything because we couldn't work together. We couldn't write together. And then when David came in, boom, just the gates are open, the doors are open, the windows are open, fresh air is coming in, there's new ideas, there's new energy, there's this whole creative surge. And it took a couple of years to work on a new album, and it took a long time to get going with David just because of those COVID lockdowns.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That everybody lost.
Challenging for everybody.
Everybody lost 2 years out of their life and, messed up a whole generation of school children.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There are many repercussions that are yet to come for that. But
you guys persevered. Looks like you guys persevered.
It took a while. It took a while to get through all that, and now the record is out, and now we're doing gigs, and now it's just upwards and onwards, and now like I was saying before, the bus was almost in the station, but now there's many chapters to go before the book is finished. Mixing my analogies there, but.
Well, great.
There are many more bus routes to go and passengers to be picked up along the way. Let's put it that way.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad to hear you guys are doing the live gigs and really giving out, and not only serving the music, but your message to people who are there to receive both both the music.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. Just a couple of weeks ago, we went down to the big music store in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We just dropped like $10,000 on new musical gear for a band. We are really committed to the live show, and we're carrying a songman with us now, and we're carrying our own PA console. And it's like we're really doing everything that we can to upgrade the show for people. So we put on a great concert. We want to deliver. We want people to feel as good about the live show as they do about the album. It's a new thing, and it's better than ever.
Well, we've talked a lot about the bands most of this time as a whole, kind of. But I would like to ask you a couple of questions here, and you can choose, I guess, whether you feel you want to answer it on a personal level or professional level. But what do you feel, is your biggest accomplishment so far?
Reasonably surviving to the age that I'm at without destroying myself or my family.
That's a big goal. That's quite an accomplishment these days for a lot of folks.
It's difficult to talk about my own work, but I do know that I'm not shy about saying that I feel that what I've done on the Fear No Evil album is ranks up there with the best, and probably better than anything else I've ever done. I mean, there's been moments here and there on other albums, but this is far and away the most complete representation of my guitar work for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe not for somebody else. I know people have their favorite albums, and you know, somebody who goes, well, that's just wrong because my favorite album is, you know, Triumphant Return, and you know, you can't top that album, so how dare you say that? Because that's my favorite album. It's like, and that's fine for somebody who thinks that way, but just for me personally, I feel really great about what we did, and I'm also realizing that, man, in 6 lifetimes, I'll never get to be like half of maybe what Eddie Van Halen accomplished in 1 lifetime, but at least I can say that, yeah, but at least for right now, I'm the best version of me.
Yeah, and it comes out on this album.
And you have to be the best version of you. And it's like people have said to Dave, people have said to me that David reminds them of, I've heard everything from David Coverdale to Ronnie James Dio, Sammy Hagar. It's like, well, Dave doesn't sound, you know, he's not any of those guys, but the flip side of that is that Dave sounds like the best version of Dave.
Yeah, so very recognizable, but not sounding like anybody.
We're all getting better at what we do. So that's my answer to that question.
Well, you guys, I mean, you did a spectacular job on this album. Your solos are just incendiary. It's really great stuff. I really appreciate that. It's nice to hear. Well, it's coming from a guy who, you know, as a teenager, I wanted to be a guitarist. That was my thing. I wanted to be a rock guitarist. And, you know, it took me quite a few years to realize that is not a skill set that I have. But I can certainly appreciate, even probably more so, people who do. Because, you know, I found it to be very difficult to to really try to do a lot of those, you know, solos and riffs. It just wasn't a natural thing for me, and even unnaturally trying to force learn it was not something for me. So, you know, it's a gift that you have, and it's impressive, and it's also, even though it's a gift, you can tell, especially on this album, that you continue to work to improve that gift, you know, what you have, the natural talent, even more so. So, yeah, I would like to, you know, just thank you for your work over the years with the band, providing great music and music with a message for many people who, you know, are looking for, like we've talked earlier, an alternative to rock music that they like the message to as well.
Okay.
Is there anything you would like to say in closing, maybe to your fans that are out there? I always like to give you an opportunity to talk to them.
Well, I just want to say thank you to all of our fans who have supported us for decades now. And we love you, and you are a primary inspiration for everything that we do. Everything that we do is filtered through the context of, man, what do you think people are going to think of this? How do you think our fans are going to like this? So we're always working for what we do so that it's pleasing to you guys, and we love you, and God bless you, and we pray for you, that God would meet you wherever your need is, in your finances, in your health, in your spiritual walk with the Lord, in your family relationships, everything. And we want to see revival in America, because politics is not going to heal the divisions in our country, but if people are submitted to the Lordship of Jesus Christ, that will heal our country, and that will create the unity that everybody wants. And we can't wait to see you guys on our live dates. So God bless you, and hope to see you out at the shows.
Well, Rex, I have to say thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us here at Excess Rock. Very insightful interview. I feel like I've learned a lot about the band that I didn't know, and a lot about, the construction of this new album. And, of course, we highly recommend that listeners go out and grab your new album because it is simply fantastic.
Well, thank you so much, Bobby.